What's the one thing you thought could never happen to you but did? Story 1. I was 51. I had the day off and was feeling great. Decided to take an afternoon nap. As soon as my head hit the pillow, I had a massive heart attack that destroyed 40% of my heart. I woke up 3 days later on a ventilator and had no idea what the heck happened. Story 2. So, I'm at the bus stop when this older lady asks for directions to the hospital. I decide to walk her there and we chat. Turns out she's a famous author in disguise, researching for her next book. Fast forward, she thanks me, and a few months later, her book drops. I check it out, and there's my name in the acknowledgments. Never thought helping someone out would land me a shout-out in a best-selling novel. Life is wild, man. Story 3, I got fat, lol. When you're slim, fit, pretty much your whole life, you take it for granted in many ways. It was very easy, at least it was for me, to fall into a rut of bad habits for a variety of reasons. And now I'm in a place where I've got a decent amount of weight to lose, and I feel like I'm back at square one when it comes to fitness. If you don't use it, you can in fact lose it. Story 4. Suffering with anorexia and recovering from anorexia. We watched an eating disorder documentary in school, and I remember seeing footage of people in hospital crying over having to eat chips and thinking WTF is wrong with them. A few years later, being in and out of eating disorder units was the next 15 years of my life. I was so entrenched I thought I'd never recover. Hell, I had consultants tell me I'd be a revolving door patient for the rest of my life. As I was leaving my last hospital admission, the consultant told me he'd see me back in a month. That was 5 years ago. It's not be smooth sailing, but I'm in full recovery now, with a full-time job I love, able to enjoy life and eat freely. The life of hospitals is a distant memory. Story 5. Getting a really serious case of pneumonia as an active, healthy 40-year-old. I went from feeling a bit ill, developing a cough, to a coma in intensive care on life support in just 3 days. Spent 5 weeks in a coma with full lung and then kidney failure, and another 3 doing physio and recovering. Story 6. Got attacked by an entire swarm of killer bees on top of a mountain. Almost fell off the mountain running down the trail, and nearly considered jumping in my panic. Was raking bees out of my hair as they tried to get to my scalp, and had to cover my face with my shirt to prevent them from climbing into my face holes. Thought I was gonna die, got pretty scraped up and stung as I clawed my way down the trail without stopping. I never knew the sound of a swarm could be so loud and terrifying. I had nightmares for weeks after. Another hiker in the same area had been attacked by killer bees a few years prior, and they stayed on his body for 8 hours, preventing rescuers from recovering his body. I now have an extreme fear of flying insects, lol. Story 7. I was diagnosed with premature ovarian failure, and I grieved over the loss of never being a mother. My heart would melt and break every time one of my students would accidentally call me mom. Fast forward 4 years from that point, and thanks to donor egg IVF, I am currently 11 weeks pregnant. I'm so grateful for this possibility and for going on this journey. Story 8. My ex-husband of 12 years got court summons because he was being convicted of internet child sex crimes. Then my 24-year-old sister died in the same week. I trusted him. Everyone trusted him. He got 7 years. He turned out to be an actual sociopath, using my naivety and trauma from growing up in a narcissistic family dynamic to manipulate me my entire life. My sister had Down syndrome. She was amazing, and I expected her to at least live until she was 50. I miss her so much. I still struggle with both and have severe loss trauma. I can't fully feel happy because I'm so afraid of everything going so wrong again. Story 9. A tornado damaged my roof while I was trying to sell my house. 2 years later, the next house burned down. 6 months after that, a massive ice storm dropped 4 trees and completely crushed the next house. In that same year, I took an antibiotic that destroyed my connective tissue. My husband got 3rd-degree burns in the house fire, and my son got bit by a copperhead snake. My grandfather died of COVID, and my car caught fire. I've learned to never, ever assume that something won't happen to you. Story 10. Never would have thought that I would be disabled. I had a stroke from a massive brain bleed in 2020. It caused me to be hemiplegic and wheelchair-bound and unable to take care of myself. It fucking sucks. I'm living in a nursing home in my mid-30s, surrounded by elderly people who are completely unaware of their surroundings. But it's better now than it was last year, and getting better because I'm moving into a house where I will receive direct support services from my State's Choices program 10 more days, almost to single digits. Story 11. In 2000, I had my own company and was pulling down more income than I am now, 24 years later. Figured I'd be a multimillionaire by 35. Got married, had a kid, bought a house, bought a Porsche and a BMW for my wife. 18 months later, after 9/11, I'm tarring roofs in the Florida sun and hanging drywall at night just so I don't lose my house. Story 12. I never thought I would actually be married, but I met this impossibly cute girl who doesn't play mind games, actually says what she wants, pathologically honest and literally incapable from keeping anything from me. The shit she has told me that honestly means nothing. I found someone that I don't have to spend the rest of my life with, but I get to. Every day I try to be a better man so that I can be worthy of her. We've only been married a little under 3 years, but she still gives me butterflies. Story 13. I was adopted, but by my grandparents, so I do know my biological parents. I'd hear stories and know all the key points and just know my life as it is. My biological mom died when I was 21, and I was sitting around a fire with some of her old friends trading stories, and someone made a joke about a long-lost sibling. I can still picture the look on my grandmother's face as she shared that story. So I guess I have a long-lost sister out there somewhere. She was born on Christmas in 2006. I'm sad I never got to know her. Story 14. I turned my mental health around. I thought I would commit suicide by 23. I just couldn't see a light at the end of the tunnel despite medication, therapy, a great partner, exercise, and diet. I had a huge mental breakdown, was hospitalized, diagnosed with BPD. I ended up moving states and starting over. Now I'm 25 and have the best friends anyone could ask for. I haven't been suicidal in a year now. I'm even back working full-time like a normal adult. I actually smile now. Story 15. I was diagnosed with Crohn's in October 2023. A month later, went to the ER in extricating pain. Had a bowel resection that resulted in stool leaking into my body. I required a second surgery to see where the leak was coming from, went septic, and spent 5 days in a coma. Woke up on Thanksgiving Day with an ostomy bag. Story 16. I'm short on memories at the moment, but there was that time when I was a lil kid lining up the chairs in a row and running on top of them back and forth, back and forth. My mom said, "You're gonna fall," and I replied something like, "I can't fall, mother. I'm immune." Another 3 steps, and I hit the floor chin first, bust my lower lip and bit a hole through my tongue. Story 17. Become the bitter adults that I hated when I was teenager. Just pure what I call loser. The kinds who just look like so hateful of everyone and not a single happiness in their bodies. There's even one person who comes to my store and I'm terrified of her each time I see in my line she looks so angry as if she's going to yell at me. For some effing reason, my life just gone to the hell and my face as I get older becoming more and more hateful, bitchy looking. That biggest factor is being bullied to the hell by my coworkers, happening for 3 years and HR can't do shit about it. Story 18. A plane crashed into my house. It's more accurate to say it crashed in my driveway and flaming wreckage hit my house and my car. The pilot was ejected and died. His body was in my side yard minus his head, which the police had to search for. His head was probably in several pieces because his brains were laying in a pile near my car. Luckily, I was the only one home. I heard the crash and ended up in my driveway in bare feet with wreckage, blood, and fire all around. A news station looked up the number on the tail of the plane and called the pilot's wife. That's how she found out. She drove up and saw the wreck, but I only saw her on the news. Story 19. I ended up trapped in DV. If you had ever met me, you'd be just as surprised. I've always been strong, confident, hyper-independent, and capable. The men I had dated historically had always been good to me. Things just didn't work out for one reason or another, but the relationships all ended amicably. This man seemed very similar. We had long talks about values, plans, everything you could imagine. We'd been together for a couple years. A personal tragedy hit me, and he took advantage of how vulnerable it made me. The first time he hurt me, I ended things. I said we'd both be happier apart and wanted to make a plan to separate everything. That's when he started threatening me. In front of everyone else, he was always the same guy he had been. When we were alone, he was a monster. No one believed me about how bad it was. Even when he held me at gunpoint, I fought back. I fawned. I tried everything to get him to let me leave. Unfortunately, no amount of self-confidence can win out over money, power, and social capital. I'm finally free, but it took major illness and my body not ever properly recovering to be allowed out without severe repercussions. While I was down, he destroyed my reputation with lies, little by little. I came to find he had been doing that behind my back the entire relationship. I'm still too close to feel like I can relax, but I still need competent medical care and I have to file for bankruptcy due to the bills, so getting myself to somewhere I can heal may never be possible. I just want to start over fresh somewhere and get healthy. My entire life was destroyed and there was nothing I could do about it. Story 20, homelessness. I worked as a professional chef for years. Restaurants have high turnover and most fail. This was in Florida. I got a job at a new restaurant and had spent a lot to move to Florida from out of state. Just 7 months in, the business ran into financial trouble. They laid off a bunch of us. I had enough to last for a couple of months, but jobs were not coming in that time. I was just up against the wall and eventually was evicted, living in a city that I barely knew. Most of my stuff was gone, sleeping in a park, shelter, or the stairway behind an office building. Brutal. Got a job at a supermarket deli, lived in a motel, got enough scrap together to travel back home. I was able to get an actual job to my profession when I got back to my home city. Story 21. That I would end up in my 40s unmarried and having never had a long-term relationship. I was a late bloomer, then once men finally started showing me attention, it never evolved into anything. The gaps in between were long. I guess I just felt someday it would be my turn, and someday hasn't come. And before I get the obligatory, you never know. You might meet the love of your life when you're 90. I very much want to be a biological mother with said guy. So that ship has sailed. Story 22. Being completely and utterly destroyed by a relationship. I looked for her earlier today. I held her hand, cried and begged her to stay. She texted her new boyfriend to come get me to fuck off. She told her friends and my friends about what I did, told them that she was afraid that I would hurt her. I have never laid hands on her for the past 4 years. I have never once even shouted at her. All I wanted was to tell her how much I still love her. And if that doesn't work, I'm ready to let her go. I just wanted to see her for the last time. It wasn't the brightest decision, but I did not expect her to be this cruel. The person that I loved no longer exists. I've always thought that I was strong, stoic. Nothing could hurt me deep, but this broke me. I don't think I can ever be vulnerable with anyone else again. I don't believe in love anymore. I wish the past 4 years never happened. I wish I never met her. I never thought that she'd be the one to break me. Story 23. My first time ever playing the Powerball, I told my husband I would win. I really truly believed my ticket was a winner. He mocked me all day saying I wouldn't even get one number. Basically, he thought it would never happen to me. Well, I matched 3 out of 6 numbers and won $9. It's nothing big. But hey, I won and it happens. I think you'd be shocked how many people get really close but not close enough. Story 24. Found a vocation to support myself and had a decent career. I remember distinctly thinking after graduating high school and preparing to go off to college that I wouldn't be able to be successful in the adult world. I had only had a couple of jobs as a teenager working in retail or food service and had no vocational interests. The couple of majors that sounded interesting, like history, were also very difficult to obtain any success in, and I was right for a while. I basically flamed out of college at 20 and didn't know what to do with myself. Worked a few decent-paying food service jobs, and then finally had enough energy to go back to college at 26 part-time. After a couple more false starts, I finally finished my bachelor's at 32. Now I'm a CPA, and my wife and I are living in our 5th house together and hope to be retiring within the next 10 years. Story 25. I became a mother. My ex left me after he decided he didn't want to have kids anymore. I fell in love with and married a man who had a vasectomy. Reversing it was prohibitively expensive. I assumed I'd never have a child. In 2022, we finalized the adoption of our daughter, just weeks shy of her 18th birthday. She's absolutely amazing. Thoughtful, driven, smart, beautiful, and witty as hell. I love being her mom. Story 26. The lived experience of sudden and intense Machiavellian torment and abuse resulting in substance disorder, poverty, and suicidality during and following my divorce, after working really hard at doing everything right to set myself up for a great life. I'd say be careful who you choose, kids. But sometimes you never know they're a monster underneath it all. I didn't know for 13 years. Story 27. I'm used to be a trucker, but still drive trucks occasionally for work. The thought of losing your trailer while driving is hilarious and almost never happens. Well, I work in the oil fields now and the equipment is beat up, used, and there's so much equipment that it doesn't always get the TLC it deserves. Once, when pulling onto a highway, my old 5th wheel gave out and the locking jaws around the kingpin of my trailer just let go. I literally looked into my mirror in confusing only to see my own trailer rolling across the highway sideways. Story 28. Was working in downtown Dallas and the company had moved from the warehouse to this high-rise in Deep Ellum. Fast forward several months and I was entering our office in the morning and I was greeted by a woman in a nice suit. She asked if I would be okay with them filming Walker, Texas Ranger in our building for a few hours. I said I didn't mind, and I asked if I could get a signed Chuck Norris photo for my fill. They shot the scenes, and she came back and thanked me and told me they would send the picture to my office. I had no real expectations of getting the picture, so the only person I told was my wife. 2 weeks later, the Friday before we were going to her parents for my first introduction. I practically floated home knowing I would be able to impress her dad with TV star's autograph, and it was the start of a wonderful friendship with my Phil. He treated me like his son. Story 29, 2 things. First, got into a bad car accident where I almost snapped my neck. I was very lucky to walk away alive with only a fractured neck and a black eye. Never in a million years thought I'd get into a wreck like that. Second, my best friend went missing. Worst year of my life. She was found 4 months later deceased. The not knowing was the worst, but it wasn't necessarily relief to find out she was dead. When she first reported missing, I thought she would be back in a few days, maybe. Boy, was I wrong.